welcome to the Flipped IRSPBL 2021 series of webinars. So I will be moderating the session, and we have 3 presentations of 4 minutes each. So just a quick summary of what to expect in this session. We're looking at preparing students for future real-world problems, and PBL has been adopted as a new pedagogical approach at universities all over the world. So we're comparing traditional pedagogical approaches to PBL approaches. And in this, students engaging in this kind of environment are equipped with problem-solving skills, preparing them for future challenging problems in the field of work. So in this session specifically, we have 3 papers relating an experience of their implementation of PBL in different parts of the world. And from these three presentations, different questions relating to challenges and possibilities on the implementation will be addressed. So before I introduce the first presenter, I want to welcome you to write your questions and comments in the chat room. The session will take point of departure in short presentations from the presenters, but will afterwards be facilitated as a plenary discussion. We will try to address the topics in the papers and perhaps even move beyond the papers and discussing the general theme of democracy, social progress, and PBL, and the implementation of PBL more generally, with inputs from the participants as well as the presenters. So once we've finished the presentations, we will move to this panel discussion, where authors will have an opportunity to answer questions and follow up on your comments. But I will be here throughout, and Ida is also here for support, and Stina. So if any of you have any questions, you can just put it in the chat box and we'll get to that. Okay, so I think then maybe to introduce the first presenter. And as I introduce the first presenter, we'll have a look at the work. The first presentation has the title PBL Framework for an African Higher Education, a case study in UENR. And it will be presented by Benjamin Asuban Bayori from UENR Sunyani.
Yeah, hello.
Hi, Benjamin. Yes, we can hear you. Are you able to share your screen to start the presentation?
Yes. Okay, it's everything okay?
Yes, we can see it well. Thank you.
All right. So I have 4 minutes, right?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. So my name is Benjamin Asuban Bayori, like you said. And my other colleagues are Francis Atiogbe and Samuel James. And we are from the University of Energy and Natural Resources. That is UENR. So UENR fully means University of Energy and Natural Resources. So our work has to do with PBL framework for African higher education, a case study in UNED. So we just looked at applying PBL, which has been introduced over the years in our university, and trying to relate it to the African setting and our tradition and beliefs and our training from childhood, how we have been trained. Our training mostly is the teacher-centered training, which is the traditional face-to-face learning. So PBL is a different type of learning approach where it's no longer lecturer or facilitator-centered, but then student-centered. So our main contribution was just trying to see how best and developing a framework for the effective and efficient use of PBL for teaching and learning. So in the chart below, we are giving you the framework of how PBL will be used in our institution. So with our proposal, we looked at, first of all, identifying the learning outcomes and design the mode of assessment. And we said we are taking feed from Aalborg University's assessment model, and then we are taking the learning outcomes basically from our curriculum. Now that would give rise to we developing a problem that would aid the students in the learning processes. And we said, developing the problem, we take some experiences from the Aalborg University model. And we also take, it will be centered towards our local industry problems. So from our local industry problems, we try to fuse some of those problems into the classroom where students would have to learn from those problems. Now that would give rise into we dividing the students into groups to be able to look at the problems. Now this is where our model has a little bit of modification, because forming groups in developed countries is a bit different from forming groups in Africa here. Now, in forming groups in Africa here, we look at first of all our traditional beliefs, because students come from different backgrounds. They get training from different backgrounds, and based on that, we also look at how the students will relate when they are in a particular group. So we look at their religious background, their traditional background, their upbringing before we form the group, so that groups would be able, so that it will make learning easier. Because one thing we have realized is that sometimes the beliefs of people and their backgrounds influences how they relate with human beings. So if one person has a belief which is a taboo to the other person, then it becomes a problem when they are put in the same group. Now, these groups are usually formed with the help of the facilitator or the tutor. Now, we also say, because it's a new teaching and learning method, where students would have to be introduced to this teaching and learning methods. And the university is currently looking at setting up a center, which is the PBL Center. So the PBL Center would do some training of students, as well as the facilitator also doing some little training before the course commences. Then these problems are given to the groups, to research. Now, the groups would also take some feed from industry, they will take some feed from major stakeholders, and they will take some feed from facilitators to aid them in their learning process. Now, at any point in time they get stuck, they either fall onto the major stakeholders, or they fall onto the facilitator, or they fall onto the industry, or sometimes even their other research groups. Now, whatever they come out with becomes the final results of whatever research they have done. And then after that, during the production of their final results, they also visit an innovation hub. And the innovation hub helps them to critique whatever they are bringing out, to make it a bit more innovative and a bit more challenging for the industry. Then once they are done with that, an assessment is done, and we basically fall onto the ALBOC model for assessment.
Benjamin, sorry, I just want to give you a 1-minute warning.
Okay. All right. So our main contribution actually looks at we propose a PBL model framework for training creative and problem-solving graduates to produce the right manpower to engineer solving local problems. So this framework would consider behavior of both the staff, both the teaching staff and the students in the university. We'd also look at infrastructure for adapting of this model. This framework adapts the essential characteristics of the ALBOC model to achieve the intended purpose. And the intended purpose is to make students move from the teacher-centered learning to the student-centered learning. This proposal would be applied to make students gain much more higher cognitive knowledge in teaching and learning. So that is the main contribution will be in that direction. Future directions, we are looking at change management, how we would help the entire university to move from the traditional face-to-face to fully adapting the PBL model. Well, our conclusion just has to do with that. If this method is adapted, we would be able to train the right manpower for the country, who will be able to think and critique problems as they come. I don't know if my time is up, but if my time is up, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Benjamin. Thank you so much for that. I want to encourage the participants, if you guys have comments and questions, to already use the chat box for that. But we're going to roll straight into the next presentation. So our second presentation has the title Problem-Based Learning at Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology, reporting on policies, practices, and needs, and is presented by Richard Lamptey from Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology in Kumasi. So thank you, Richard.
Everyone, good day everyone. We are here to present our paper on problem-based learning at the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology. The paper is addressing reporting on policies, practices, and needs. The authors are Lamptey, Taria, Odro, and Ochre.
The main message of our paper is that there is low awareness of PBL among both teaching and managerial staff of the university. What it means here is that the university currently, PBL is not the main focus of the university. Education managers, teachers, and students varied in their needs for PBL, but common on the needs are industrial linkage, accessibility, affordability of materials and machines for projects.
So the main contribution of the paper to PBL landscape and community is the introduction of PBL and PBL-like pedagogies into Ghanaian higher education curriculum, which can prepare graduate students to solve challenging real-world problems in their work environment. In this continent, in the continent of Africa and in Ghana, to be specific, there's high unemployment rate. We have a lot of unemployed graduates, which we need to reduce. And I believe that our paper is there to address some of these issues, thereby creating jobs, thereby addressing unemployment, poverty reduction, and then well-being gets better. Thank you.
a point for discussion about PBL and its future contribution for higher education development. The findings of our study could be used to guide national or continental tertiary education policy review, inform decision making and practice on PBL. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Okay, that was the second presentation. The third presentation and the last one for the session has the title From the Business Model to Business Processes Design and Technological Support, a project-based learning approach by Americo Azevedo from Faculty of Engineering, University of Porto in Portugal.
Perfect. My name is Americo Azevedo. In this talk, I will present our approach and experience in a core course of a Master in Services Engineering. Services, with their rising importance in the global economy, are becoming more vital. Developing the service industry efficiently and effectively requires suitable approaches supported by methodologies, techniques, and tools. The Faculty of Engineering of the University of Porto became a pioneer in offering a Master in Services Engineering in September 2007. The focus is to prepare students with skills and competencies to bridge the gap between the customer, the business, and the management of services, and to develop and manage the technology-based systems that support them. This master is structured to accept students with background in engineering or in management. In this discipline, we follow a strategy grounded on the development of a business idea and a student-centered learning process. Students, organized in teams and following an engineering approach, develop a business idea. After ranking of potential ideas, one is selected. After this, the first phase is to explore the value proposition and then to design the business model. The process map follows. The next step is the specification of processes using a multi-level approach. After this, the focus is on the identification of business performance indicators and the responding development of dashboard and management systems. The concept of process and process orientation is key on this challenge. This work follows a PBL strategy. The student travels through all the phases of a methodology that is thus understood and internalized. The challenge of each team consists in designing the operating model and the management system, including the requirements for the IT support system. In each phase, different concepts, techniques, and tools are learned and experienced. PBL has the potential to prepare students more effectively for future learning because it is based on relevant key insights, namely, is constructive, is self-oriented, and promotes collaboration, and is contextual. The adoption of PBS practices and strategies lead to greater satisfaction of faculty and students. In fact, students are able to meet the course goals by learning to share individual responsibilities in working team like in real situations. They learn to make justified decision in the context of a project with goals and milestones while playing different roles in a rational manner. It is essential to encourage teamwork-oriented workshops with students. It is also essential that they understand the needs to implement mechanisms that enhance the synergies with various team members. In this context, the definition of organizational and operational rules, as well as decision-making mechanisms, are truly crucial. It is also very important for students to know the simple practices of project management, emphasizing short-term planning and the creation of sprints and so on. It is also relevant to establish a self-assessment and peer review mechanism that is fair and meaningful in the team's performance. Finally, it should point out the role, the quality, and the attitude of the lectures. Dedication, professionalism, enthusiasm are fundamental elements to achieve the objectives defined and to keep clear channels of communication, motivate the students, and preserve an open, democratic, and student-oriented relationship.
Everyone, good day, everyone.
Okay, thank you. That was the last of the three presentations. So thank you to all the authors. And so I'm going to open the plenum discussion at this stage. Before I go, I have a couple of questions from my side, and I've been observing the chat. But if anyone has an immediate question that they feel they want to pose at this stage to any one of the authors, you're welcome to do so. William, is that, are you raising your hand to ask a question? You're welcome to unmute yourself and go. Okay, perhaps then I'll just look at some of the questions that I have here. I think there was an interesting question in the chat box for Benjamin in regards with the stakeholders. I don't know if everyone is keeping track with that, but to talk a little bit about the example of major stakeholders you involve and what the main challenges are to engage them. So Benjamin, you can maybe answer that.
Yeah, okay, thank you very much. Like in the chat box, I started trying to talk a bit about the major or the main stakeholders. Now, when we talk about the major or the main stakeholders, our scope usually covers the people that are either experiencing that particular problem or the challenge are the ones that usually we describe as the major stakeholders. So if it has to do with something which is related to environmental pollution, then we will look at the major stakeholders to be the people who are nearby where the site of the pollution or the main pollution takes place. So the people around or the group of people around there are the ones who we would see are the major or the main stakeholders. Now, sometimes the challenges we face with trying to get in touch with these major stakeholders is that when the first group visits them, then what they think is they open up, they share their problems with an anticipation or expectation that the problem will be solved in a very short term. So if that is not done, then the next group of people also come trying to get information. Then they coil back to their shelves. They refuse to give information. Sometimes they become a bit rude. Sometimes they just even refuse to even open up or to even discuss with the person. That's some of the challenges. Now, sometimes too, it depends on the person's educational background. Some of them, you get there and they believe that some of these things are even actually superstitions or they are taboos. They should not even talk about them. So these are sometimes the challenges that you face when you talk about getting in touch with major stakeholders. I don't know if I have been able to address the question.
Yes, thank you, Benjamin. If there's a follow-up question.
Yes, can I make a follow-up question? First, I would actually also like Richard and America, if they could also comment, because if they also involve external stakeholders, what are the challenges they actually faced? But my follow-up question is if the stakeholders actually close up to the students or they don't, the students don't meet their expectations, or how actually this impacts the students' motivation and learning.
Yeah, if Maya says something about that, and I think this is quite important, this issue of the, let's say, the behavior of some stakeholders, but this is, in our case, in my experience, this is quite similar, like in a real company. The kind of leadership style of the CEO, you know, sometimes in companies, what we can find is people that are too much autocratic, or let's say democratic, or let's say when we believe in the people, in that case in the students, we could follow a kind of laissez-faire. So this is the different leadership styles. This is quite important when we are addressing complex, let's say, problems. In our case, we are addressing usually very complex problems because we want to explore the key point related to multidisciplinarity. So complexity means usually different disciplines, and to handle this kind of things is really important in our side, at least to let's say, to follow a kind of let's say more democratic approach with the students, let's say, to guarantee that they can really follow their decisions, they can really participate in an active way. So it means that in this kind of situations, the one of the stakeholders, like the faculty, something like that, should be able, of course, to share all the experience, but at the same time needs to let me, can I say, should allow the students to follow their way. Otherwise, it will be really difficult to guarantee the right level of motivation and commitment, because in a very complex project, we really need to guarantee the commitment of everyone involved to explore the synergies that usually we can get at the end. In our case, in fact, to avoid to call like, let's say, a group of students, we avoid to use the word group, because we prefer instead of group to call team, because in fact a team is not a group, and we try doing that to guarantee that everyone can, let's say, really participate in an active way. So I think the leadership style is really the key point on that.
Yeah, hello. So if I may follow up with that too, looking at the situation that we find ourselves in most situations, like you said, if they refuse to open up. Now, before students are actually sent out to have these kind of experiences with major stakeholders, there is some training that we give them where we let them understand that before you even try to get information from these people, you need to try to educate them. Now, in educating them, you try to group whatever you want to tell them, and you have to tell them that in solving problems, we have what we call the short term, the medium term, and the long term. In your situation, as they are meeting them, maybe their results would end up to be some kind of a long-term solution that it will bring to them, but not the immediate short-term that they expect. So first of all, some education goes on before they now try to seek for the real problem, because they make them understand that if you play around the problem, then it will become a permanent problem for you. So look at the root source of the problem so that together we can help solve the problem. So as we are sending them out, these are some of the things we let them also get to know. And we let them know that these are the things that you are going to face when you go out of school. So for now, you need to try to develop a good human relationship, because to get information from someone, that human relationship is very, very important. So when you go to Rome, there's a popular saying that if you go to Rome, you must do what the Romans do. So if you really want to get information from them, then you have to do what they do. then you can get information from them. And one of the techniques that sometimes we give them is that you get there and they are farming, you join them to farm, some kind of participating rural appraisal to getting information that you want. Because someone can't stop doing his work to give you information. But if you join him and you are working and you keep asking your questions, then of course the person knows that you are taking some part of my burden, so I should also be open enough to give you information. So that's how we look at it, the dynamics that we try to use. Thank you.
Mm. Yeah, thank you for that, Benjamin. I wonder, Richard, do you also have something to add here? Is Richard still in the room? It looks, I don't see him. I don't know if he maybe fell out. Then we can just go to the next question.
I think maybe we move to the next question. I think he lost connect. Yeah, he's back.
Hi, Richard. Sorry, I don't know if you followed that discussion and if you have something that you want to add.
Sorry, I went off at a point, but I don't have any question at the moment. Sorry.
We were asking specific questions about the stakeholders. So examples what the stakeholders that's involved and what challenge you face in engaging them. Sorry, Richard. I think maybe he's frozen again, Ida. He looks frozen.
Can I answer that question?
Yeah. Hello.
Hello.
Hello. Okay.
So.
Yeah. Okay. Go ahead. I mean, go ahead. I was coming to. Well, it's all right. Go ahead, Prof. Go ahead.
Okay. Richard, go. Yeah, I thought you were not in, so kindly move on. Yeah.
With the stakeholders, for the managers, for instance, they are aware of the system. I mean, what is happening in terms of PBL issues and all that. But their major problem is more on the resources, the infrastructure. They struggle with the infrastructure bits, and then in our work we realized that they were more interested in the industry, taking students to the industry for them to do the PBL issues, and I mean they try to acquaint themselves with the practical bits. So some of those things are some of the things that the stakeholders raised. Some too are aware, but they don't know how to go about the whole thing. So these are some of the few things that we believe that they came up from our work. Maybe okay. Prof. can add something to it, maybe.
Thank you, Richard. Mona, yes, you had a question.
Yes, and it's still related to this issue of stakeholders, because as I remember it, Benjamin, in your framework, the first slide, your overall sort of picture, there was in the left-hand side a box called industry that contributed to the development of the problem. So now, assuming that industry and major external stakeholders at least are to some extent at least overlapping, then I think it's very important to make the stakeholders aware that what they can get out of this collaboration with students groups is that they can get problems which they might otherwise not have had the resources to solve themselves within their company. They can get such problems looked into and possibly solved by student groups, so that it becomes a mutual beneficial collaboration when the students go out to the major stakeholders to search for information that they can use in their work with the problem. Then at the same time, the stakeholders will actually possibly get a solution to a problem they might have been struggling with. I think it's important to make the stakeholders understand that there is a mutual beneficial outcome of collaborating with students. And I know that when the student-centered learning group was here in Aalborg, we did visit some student groups and talked not only with the students, but also with representatives for the companies that they collaborated with, so that these company representatives could give their view on what's the benefit in it, what's in it for them to collaborate with students. I think it's important to highlight to stakeholders this aspect. Of course, also, as you said, it's also very important to train the students to go out and talk with stakeholders so that they know how to behave when they go out. But I think it's probably a good idea to work with both parts, both the stakeholders and the students, to make sure that their meeting will be beneficial for both parts. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mona. Just in the context of this specific session being about democracy, social progress, and PBL, maybe the three authors, I can ask this question to you, and you can maybe just have your reflections on that. Do you feel like PBL contributes to this direction, or by the implementation of PBL, would it contribute to democracy, social progress, and social progress? So maybe let's start Benjamin first, like let's go in the same order as you presented. If Benjamin is still in the room, I can't, oh yes, I see you. Benjamin, you want to give your thoughts on that, if you have something?
Please, can I get the question again? I was a little bit attending, I was doing something else. Can you repeat that for me again?
So the question is basically to say, by implementing PBL, is there some contribution to democracy and social progress?
Yes, I would say yes, because if we talk about democracy, we are looking at moving from maybe some kind of a military arena to an arena where everybody has a say and everyone has an equal right, where we are governed and ruled by law. So if we want to look at it in terms of PBL, PBL moves away from that one man who comes into the class and is like a dictator to the learners. He comes in and whatever he says is what is accepted or what is legally accepted, and whoever is at the background listens to him and no one else. If we look at it in terms of PBL, where we are shifting it from that one man to rather to the entire population to critique the problem that is given, or to critique whatever is being brought on board and being discussed, then I think that PBL is actually contributing to democracy. I am looking at it from that aspect where you allow the learners, or you allow the students, or yes, the students or the learners to be the ones to drive the class. You are making them get actively, to participate actively in the classroom or even outside the classroom. And when you do that, it helps them to attain the higher cognitives of learning. They begin to be able to become independent. They are able to do things on their own. They are able to build, like the other presenter said, no longer working in isolation, but working in a team. They build that team spirit from childhood, and they grow up with it. And they know that when a problem comes, it's not really my problem, but it is our problem. So we need to put our heads together to be able to address the problem. Otherwise, it would become, one day it will come back to haunt us if we don't look at it from that dimension. So I think PBL has contributed to social progress.
Thank you, Benjamin. Richard, you want to add anything to that, or have a different perspective?
Oh yes, PBL has done quite a lot, and the issue of giving students the opportunity to develop skills in reasoning and having this type of self-directed learning have also allowed students to work in collaborative groups and to discover what they need to learn to solve problems. All these things has rather help with the issue of social progress. It's have moved the social environment to another level. You know, once you make people, students and people think outside the box, even though you didn't say outside the box, we make people think. You see, so some of the PBL thing, I think that is the way to go, and I think is the best, because the issue is that now ensuring effective PBL, which really entails achieving some set goals, like for instance, letting students have flexible learning type of thing, having effective problem skills, knowing how to solve problems, and those self-directed learning skills. All these skills helps the individual or the human being to, develop to another level, which improves a democratic society, and then I believe in a nutshell, I think PBL has really helped with the democratic arena and then the social ecosystem.
Thank you, Richard. Americo, you want to comment on that?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, for sure that the implementation of PBL will contribute for, let's say, for a more democratic environment, at least at work level. And this is quite important because, as I said before, when we follow or when we adopt a PBL strategy, in fact, we are acting like a facilitator for, let's say, for the students. It means that the students take the responsibility of different areas of their work. This is the totally opposite to the idea of, as I said, a kind of autocratic approach where the superiors do not take into consideration the ideas and the suggestions of, let's say, the subordinates, in that case, the students. It means that in this kind of more autocratic environment, like a manager in the company will supervise subordinates very closely. They like to make all the decisions and so on. This is totally the opposite when we welcome the feedbacks of the other stakeholders, in particular of the students. So we should be open and we should welcome their contributions for the decision making. It means that we need to trust in the subordinates, in particular in the students. It means that you should encourage their participation. It means that you should be able to delegate. And so this is a democratic. When we are doing like this is democracy. Is this capacity to really to trust, to involve, to let's say to welcome the feedback of everyone. And for sure the PBL can really, let's say, can give, can leverage this behavior of more democratic, even in society, for sure.
Yeah, thank you, America. And I think these are very interesting points that link quite well together. I think even thinking about Mona's comment on taking the students out to engage with stakeholders creates some sense of social awareness in that context. So there's almost like a feedback loop between being trained in a specific way through a PBL system and somehow engaging with stakeholders or community that has an additional benefit of creating an awareness on both sides, and hopefully mutually beneficial awareness that will eventually lead to social progress. Mona, do you have another comment? Yes, I saw you come on.
Yeah, because I tend to agree with what Americo said just now. And also what the other speakers have said. Yes, definitely, problem-based learning does enhance democracy, because where formerly it was the teacher up here lecturing to the students and the students sitting down here and just taking in all the wise words of the professor. Now it's a more even relationship. The kind of knowledge that students generate within the project work, in discussions among themselves, in discussions with the stakeholders, in searching for information from a lot of other sources, that knowledge is also equally valid as whatever knowledge the lecturer, the teacher, the facilitator may have. So it creates a more even relationship between teacher and student. But then I'm wondering whether maybe that is exactly one of the reasons why problem-based learning, in spite of all the advantages that it has, is not yet as outspread as it should be, because teachers fear to some extent losing control of the situation, having to deal with students at a more even basis. So they will not any longer be the expert up here. So I don't know, but that's just a speculation from my side, that maybe that's one of the reasons why we have difficulties in actually having problem-based learning adapted widely, such as it should be. Thank you.
Yeah, but yeah, I think this point is really important. I think that one possibility or one approach from, let's say, the faculty will be to create some kind of, let's say, touch points along the along the semester, touch points to really to not only to do a kind of technical review of the work in progress by the students, but also to give some, let's say, focus advices like a consultant, but trying to understand that the consultant is really a kind of added value person. When the students feel that, this will be much more easier to let's say, to develop this kind of PBL strategy in these complex projects. Usually what our experience, when we are using this, when we are following this strategy in some of courses in our university, basically the most important thing from our experience is to guarantee that everyone knows the methodology that we intend to follow. It means that the methodology, like a set of stages, and in each stage, it means that we need to come up with some kind of outcome. We need to guarantee like a baseline to the next stage. And this is very important to guarantee from the student side that they are progressing, they are getting results, and at the same time they can feel that maybe they are not achieving what they want to achieve in that particular point. So I think that okay, if we follow this kind of, let's say, more laissez-faire approach, where the faculty is the facilitator, then will be really necessary to implement a kind of like evaluation sprints, short-term, let's say, short-term cycles to have this kind of contact with them. In our case, I really feel the satisfaction of the students when we have meetings with the students. We ask for them to prepare after our meeting what we call the minutes of the meeting. And this was a key rule to guarantee that they are really understanding all the process, because during the meeting we can think that they are understanding what we want or what we are really addressing, but when we are asked them to write the conclusions of the meeting, usually we get some surprises. And this is very, very, very important to implement this kind of mechanisms to guarantee that, okay, they are free to follow, but at the same time, they need to, let's say, to guarantee that some milestones are really achieved. Well, but this is only our experience in the last, let's say, last 15 years or something like that.
Thank you, America. I think, Eva, you had a question before. I just want to check parts of it, I think, have been addressed in the discussion. I don't know if you addressed that question to someone specific. So if you want to unmute yourself and maybe address a part that hasn't been answered or to a specific author, you're welcome to.
Yeah, it was, since the title was democracy and so on, I was also wondering about the application of PBL in municipalities. So, but I don't know if I'm let out of scope, because we only talk about the application of PBL at universities here, higher education. my interest was using PBL as a tool, not in higher education, but in democracy, work.
Like to address like a specific problem, something
yes,
like that?
I posed the example of implementation of SDGs in municipalities.
Okay, Eva, we have already some experience with also some of our students, in particular in some counties, some municipalities, related to the implementation of specific, let's say, improvement programs. If you want, let's say, to guarantee the commitment of the different workers at the municipality around a specific problem, they really need to learn how to do that. They need to learn some techniques, some tools. And a very interesting thing is to, usually we define a kind of project using like a PBL approach. And the idea is really to, let's say, all stakeholders in that case, persons from the municipality and also students from the university, they are following, again, this specific method, let's say a methodology, and they at the end they can it's like I don't know if you are common for you, this term is like a Kaizen approach, you know, the idea of Kaizen approach. It means that a kind of small, very short interactions, and at the end we can get the result. So this is the idea, to create very short things, small improvements, like a quick wins, to guarantee that everyone will be really involved. And this is really interesting when we use this, when we can, let's say, merge these ideas of Kaizens with PBL in particular to address this kind of, let's say, challenges, in particular in complex organizations like a municipality or government organizations, because it's really is really difficult sometimes. But if we use that, I think what we get is much more a higher commitment. I think the people are seeing the results, and this is very, very important. Very important is to see, to feel. Yeah.
Thank you, Americo. I think we have maybe 1 minute left. So if Benjamin or Richard, you want to comment or have some experience of application of PBL outside of higher education, if you want to just add something to that.
Mine wasn't. I just wanted to. I'm thinking through something, and I want to get a question, an answer to it. So, you know, problem-based learning is well acknowledged to provide students with guided experience in learning through solving complex problems. But you know, in some environment where the society prevents children from talking, from asking questions, from, you know, there's a bit of depression and a bit of do it for them instead of do it themselves. They do it themselves. How do you overcome some of these things by introducing PBL and all that? I don't know whether my question is clear. In an environment where children, when they don't allow children to be asking too many questions, and you know, hey, keep quiet, and then more or less you have to do it for them instead of they doing it themselves.
Yes.
I don't know how you can bring it to PBL or make PBL work effective in society like that. Yes. That's my question.
2 o'clock.
Yeah, thank you, Richard. I think that's an extremely complicated question to answer.
Think,
I don't know if someone wants to as a last thought, because I'm going to close the session in like the next minute. So as a last thought to Richard. William, did you have a comment, or Mona? William?
Well, it's not.
Okay, William,
I think to follow up with that. Following up with that, traditionally, which I think Mona knows very well in Africa, and that's why democracy and PBL, traditionally, the younger people, they feel that the older people, young and old, they think the older people are embodiment of knowledge. And that is why you have chiefs and those kind of structures. And therefore, when it comes to democracy, where the student, a younger person, has knowledge, and the older person, who is the lecturer or the facilitator, want to submit, in the minds of the younger person all the time. And that is not the same thing in the Western countries in Europe. But here in Africa, in the South, this is the situation.
And therefore, the older people, they also take the motivation, the pride. They feel good inside themselves that they are embodiment of knowledge. So when it comes to democracy, with young age groupings traditionally here, it becomes a little bit difficult. But I think that, yes, we can still push. So what Richard is asking, the question that Richard is asking is very valid for us here, where we respect age and we respect so much tradition. And if you go to the church, you'll find that the congregation think that the priest is the embodiment and he's close to God than any other person, which is not the truth. But this is our belief. And it makes democracy, which is PBL in democracy, very difficult in our place here as compared to your place in the north. Thank you very much. I think Mona is smiling because I know she had this experience.
Thank you so much, Willie.
What I wanted to say is that many years ago, we're back in 2004-5 or so, we did a small study in Aalborg University with our Chinese guest students. We had been discussing a lot about international students, and we had problems with international students coming into Aalborg University and not being able to understand what is expected of me to be a good student in this university, because it's so much different from the universities I'm used to from back home. And we had all agreed that especially the Chinese students had made the difficulties. So we made this small study and interviewed 15 Chinese students. And it was together with a PhD student who was a Chinese herself. And yes, they all agreed that it had been really, really difficult in the beginning to witness how their Danish group mates would speak to the teacher, how they would interact with the teacher on this equal level that I talked about before, and how they would sometimes discuss with the teacher and say, oh, but we don't really believe that this is right, what you're saying now, because of such and such. But then, as they said, gradually it dawned on us that we were allowed to think for ourselves for once in our lifetime. And it took none of them more than more than maximum of maybe 6 months before they had adapted the exact same style of interacting with teachers, and so, of course, still being polite and as they would be back home. But the idea of being allowed to speak up and to have an opinion, and an opinion that would be listened to, that they adapted to. And I would say that in all the many places where I've been speaking to both teachers and students, or to teachers or students, whatever, it's normally not been the students who are most hesitant to go in and try problem-based learning. It is more, as I said before, in my perspective at least, the teachers who are a bit more hesitant. So I think that problem-based learning will work through and through. My first experience with, not experience, but my first discussions about problem-based learning in Africa was back in 1996. And at that time, the Danish students that I was traveling with completely just turned down and said, that will never work in Africa. But now I'm much more optimistic than I was in 1996. I think
Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much for that, Mona. And this discussion is so interesting, but unfortunately we have to close. So I really want to thank all the presenters for their work, and all the participants for their reflections and their questions. And thank you for joining us today. I think we had some really interesting points in terms of PBL and its implementation and its impact on social progress and democracy. So thanks so much, and yeah, enjoy the rest of the seminars.
Thank you, Lenoni.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lenoni. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
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 Bye. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye, colleagues.
Leave.